Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I want to spend time in digging a little bit inside the Siriopla adapters for the lenses for my Durst enlarger. I think it's a lot of users of these enlargers with the different modifications on my channel, so let's discuss. And the first thing what I realized, I have two lenses, one is the 50mm and the second one is 80mm. And if you want to adapt them for the same enlarger, you need different spacing basically. Some of these adapters you can easily find on eBay, they're not really expensive. For example, I had one with my enlarger, but second one I need to buy to adopt this 80mm lens. And now looking at this lens, I just realized why this lens has so small threads and it's basically only 3 threads. And when I look at this and thinking about this, I see this locking ring. And I'm just realized I was exactly the same stupid as the previous owners of this lens, and nobody actually realized this lens comes with a locking ring. And so far, because this lens is probably really old and nobody unscrewed ever, and this ring is basically that tight on this lens. So I take the plastic tool and try to rotate it several times, and after a final struggle I actually remove it from the dead point. And now I see it's exactly the same lens what I have for 80mm, it's exactly the same spacing, and basically the tail of the both lenses looks almost the same with the mounting side. And now when I mount it to the short adapter, you can actually see this is exactly how it should look like, it's flat and looks perfect. I actually prefer Rhodes stock lenses. First of all, they have a better stop, and secondly, you can change the value of the exposure gradually. I actually never use it, but probably it's a really good idea if you want to just dial exposure a little bit. So let's measure it, and because I want to make adapter probably in future for my photo calibrator, I want to start with some small project, which will move forward my development of the tools for my darkroom and enlarger. I don't want to recreate the threads because I already have a lock ring, so I will just make a simple adapter with a hole which is a little bit bigger than the screw on the tail side of the enlarger, and basically locking with the same ring what I have in stock. At least for now I don't think I can replicate the same step of the threads on my printer. Maybe with a smaller nozzle I can try something, but not for today, and I think it's not necessary because I anyway have a locking ring. First of all, I want to replace the adapter which I use with the lenses to mount constantly my own sensor and have a proper settings all the time with the repeatability of the measurements. For now it's mostly for R&D purposes, but I think in future I will also make something interesting with these adapters. And this is actually measurement of the Siriopla as far as I remember, so deep adapter, so medium scale for my 50mm lens. And stepping from that, I actually create the initial 3D structure and with a rotational sequence, and this is actually how the adapter looks like. But unfortunately this adapter doesn't really perfect match for the 3D printing because we have a lot of overhangs here, and also it's kind of a flying around and I don't really have any need to have this profile here. So if you take a look on this cross section, we don't really need this step up in the 3D printing and in reality, and this thread of 5mm don't really have any advantage for us because here we put the lock ring, and secondly this lip probably it's a good idea to print it separately as a next step. And now based on the knowledge on the 3D printing, I actually can say, okay, I will make modifications and make it print in the 2 parts. So I will place this lip on a table and print it upwards, and I will print this part as a second part, as an easy part. And actually each time I need a reprint, I also can reprint only this part if I don't want to glue them together. So if we check the design, this is actually design difference, so I don't really have this step anymore, and I have a one tubular thing, and I have only one lip which is connecting to the enlarger. And if I check the cross-section design, I make it a little bit thinner because it doesn't really make any difference in our case, and I make it 2 parts as I mentioned before. So this is a part number 1, and this is part which is actually main hole for lens here, and this is body of the thing itself, and we don't really have a lip here, so this will be a flat surface on the table, and here is just a straightforward print without any problems on the 3D printer. And if I go to the slicer, this is basically our two structures, what we want to print. I'm going to start with the thin one, and because it's just faster to print, I will use 100% in fill. And this is our part, which is actually going on top of the first part. And if you look for the side view, this is actually how they will be placed. So they will print upwards, both of them in the same time. And after slicing this design, you can easily see that the layers situated evenly, and I don't really have any problems with the slicing of this setup. And it will be quite straightforward, and I usually use the difference in feel, but now it's a spiral because the whole structure actually is spiral. And our 3D printer will just move with the spirals on top of each coil and shift the layers, and this is how the whole structure will be created with approximately 1 hour of printing. Printing of the first layer is always a crucial part. For this project I will use a gray filament because I don't really have a lot of black one, and I don't really like the black one what I have because it's too shiny. So the gray one should work fine without any problems with the color on my color enlarger. And I'm using PETG as a constructive material, which is a little bit more harder to break in future. So far I have no problems with the printing and it looks fine. And I think for the thing what you can print in 1 hour, it's crazy good thing, and I will use these rings in future as my starting point to make adapters or different type of things for my enlarger. And around 1 hour print is done. And after some cooling of the mirror, what I'm using as a surface for print, I have a small amount of strings, and I think my temperature is a little bit off and the settings a little bit off for this filament, but we will fix it later if we want to reprint it for the different size. And it's designed if you press two things together, it should click, and kind of a click forever. Unfortunately, I think I don't really have a perfect resolution for this type of application, and I need a little bit smaller nozzle to print it because it was printed with a standard 0.4mm nozzle. But anyway, it's quite close to my design and original piece what I'm copying, and as you can see I can fit the lens inside and it looks quite nice without any problems. And anyway, even if it's not glued together, if you put the lock ring, it's anyway hanging upside down and the lens will never fall off from this structure. And with the first installation it also works perfectly fine in my enlarger without any problems, and it's basically replacement for the original part. As you can see, I also printed in the original size of the Siriopla and not the small adapter. And after some small assembly and gluing together two parts, I actually have an almost perfect replacement for original. And maybe with the only small defects, but functionally it's perfectly the same thing. And if you install it in an enlarger, it looks exactly the same as original. And now I'm thinking to modify this adapter in future a little bit more. First of all, improve the quality of the print, and secondly, I actually want to make these adapters also as a box for storage of the lenses. Because as you saw previously, I store the lenses just in a plastic bag, and I don't think this is a really good solution. And because I print both of the parts perfectly flat from the table, because it's a glass, I have no problems with the light leaks, and it perfectly assembles and it's perfectly flat to my enlarger surface. Designs for this adapter you can download on my Ko-fi website in the description below. And in the next videos we will discuss the progress on the color analyzer and what I make for the 1 week from last video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.